The Mariners were officially eliminated from the wild card race on their day off yesterday, so the next and final 3 games of the season come with 0 stakes. Are we looking out for anything in particular these next 3 days? And also, when the Mariners hold their end-of-season press conference, what are some do's and don'ts for Jerry Dipoto, Justin Hollander? Hey, maybe even John Stanton will be there. Probably not. We'll discuss coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, September 27th, 2024. This is Ty and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we'll put a bow on the 2024 season before the Mariners wrap things up against the A's this weekend. We'll reflect a little bit on the year, discuss this upcoming series, and then we're going to go over some do's or don'ts for the Mariners when they hold their end-of-season press conference. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So with the Royals and Tigers wins yesterday, the Mariners were officially eliminated around 12:34 p.m. Pacific. So the outcome that we were all kind of expecting, waiting for, especially after the Mariners blew that 5-0 lead against the Rangers last Sunday, has finally arrived, and the 2024 Mariners are officially, unfortunately, dead. So, Colby, when you reflect on this year, how would you describe the 2024 Seattle Mariners?
Disappointing, filled with missed opportunities, and a real pain in the butt to watch for about half the season.
Got that right.
Yeah, it is not a team that will be well remembered. And it's the Mariners have had bad teams that are pretty well remembered. They've had, good teams that didn't make the playoffs that are pretty well remembered. I think this one's just going to kind of fade into obscurity a little bit. Now a lot of the players on this team will be back next year, and there's certainly reason to be still excited about what lies ahead for the franchise and all that stuff. But overall, this is just a year of perplexing baseball being played, and it's a year of missed opportunity. I think for me, like the key word or phrase for the 2024 Mariners is opportunity, because they had it. They had it in front of them. This was the easiest year to win the division. They couldn't do that, even though they held a 10-game lead at one point. Easiest year to make the playoffs in terms of number of wins required to do so. They didn't do that this year. So it was certainly an opportunity to get into the playoffs in a weekend AL, and they maybe even make some maybe even do some damage in the playoffs with the pitching staff that they had, the starting rotation, and certainly what they're capable of being, and what the lineup has been for the last month or so. Like, they had an opportunity, I think, to get in and do some real damage and make a deep run at it, and they just couldn't take advantage. It just never lined up for them, and it's a bummer. So opportunity is the name of the game. They got it, and even in a more of a micro sense, we talked about like how the team, they needed help to make the playoffs after they'd already blown their lead and all that stuff. For the most part, they got it, and they just never took advantage of the help that they got. So it's unfortunate that, 6 weeks ago, we're talking about the Mariners destroying the Mets, and they're tied for first place. And even though they've blown the 10-game lead, they're finally starting to play a little better. And then they're going to end up losing the division. I mean, we'll see what the final tally is. I mean, it could just be one game at the end of it, but either way, it was an extremely winnable division this year. It was an extremely manageable win total they needed to get. I mean, they didn't even need to get to 90 wins to coast into the playoffs this year, and they fell short. So I think the overall sense of the team is just missed opportunity to do something special.
Yeah, I would also say wasteful. Wasteful of rotation. And not just for what they were doing on the field, but the fact that you had incredible health in that rotation for most of the year until the Luis Castillo injury occurred. And even then, you still had 4 guys pitching at number 3 levels or better. And those guys aren't going to pitch in the playoffs, and that is a crime. It's a damn shame, to be honest. And I feel for those guys, even though that they've had their share of the struggles. I mean, look, they're human too, right? Like there's going to be some bad starts, and in those moments, the offense has to pick them up. And more often than not, this year, the offense just was not able to pick them up. I think it's also wasteful of the offense that we have seen, though, over the last couple months, and especially since Edgar got here, and especially since Randy and Justin Turner showed up. This offense has been legitimately good for a month and a half straight. And it's really annoying watching them play right now because, yeah, they had a couple of really bad moments in that Yankees series, and that's an understatement, frankly. And they obviously blew that lead in Texas, but outside of that, they've actually been playing pretty solid ball. Like, I feel like if they did get in right now, this current iteration of the Mariners would actually be able to hold their own in the playoffs and actually maybe do some damage if they got in. So I don't know if it's a season full of what ifs, but it's definitely wasteful of a lot of the right pieces being in place, but just not enough of them and not at the right times. And now as a result, I believe the Mariners, even if they win out, are going to have their second worst record in the Jerry Dipoto era in years that they've actually tried to win, right? Because there's like the rebuilding years. There's 2020, there's 2019. But I believe the only worst season that they've had outside of this one, record-wise, under Dipoto and company, was 2017 when they finished 78 and 84. So, yeah, I mean, and we'll talk about this a little later on when we get into the end of season presser, but this wasn't a step forward, right? As they tried to sell last year, as Jerry tried to sell last year in his end of season presser. Like, this isn't a step forward. This was a massive step back. This was a massive failure across the board. And it's really heartbreaking considering that they had such a great opportunity. We all know about the 10-game lead. And while even when they had the 10-game lead, we were all very confused as to how they got there because they still were playing pretty bad ball, particularly on the offensive end of things. But there was still the opportunity to get it right and be able to maintain that lead. And they eventually kind of got right, but it was far too little too late. So, yeah, I mean, there are many things you can say about this season, and there are many ways that you can describe this season, but I would just say disappointing, wasteful, and ultimately, like, let's not beat around the bush here, a failure, an abject failure.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. There was so much emphasis put on this team getting off to a fast start and not having to dig themselves out of a hole. Well, they did. And then kind of the side thing was like, well, you know, last year they really stumbled down the stretch and they fell flat on their face in September when it looked like they had a playoff spot locked up. Heading into that month, they really struggled. And it's like, well, this year, you know, since Dan Wilson took over, they've been playing at a 94 win pace. So they're actually finishing pretty strong down the stretch. So they got off to a hot start. They are finishing relatively strong. And yet they're still going to miss the playoffs. And why is that? Well, it's almost like it doesn't matter how you start or how you finish. You just need to be more talented, right? Like, so forget, you know, how do we get off to a fast start? How do we sustain this throughout the year? Like, how about you just build a better team? You just build a better roster, more talent.
How do you just win more ball games?
Right, because obviously that's the problem. Because you can't say, oh, well, we got off to such a slow start that we dug ourselves a hole. Nope, you didn't. Quite the opposite. You can't say, oh, we just didn't finish. We stumbled down the stretch. Not really. I mean, there's been some bad moments, certainly, and those are amplified by the fact that you had already blown the lead by the time you started to play this well. But again, you won 18 of your last 30. Like, that's 94, 95 win baseball right there. You do that over the course of 6 months. So they're actually playing pretty good ball right now with, some truly asinine moments still mixed in of complete incompetence. But overall, they're playing good ball. So they started the year hot. They're ending the year hot.
Yep.
And it's not going to matter. They're going to miss the playoffs again. So again, it's not about how you start. It's not about how you finish. It's about having more talent. And so, at the end of the day, this team just not talented enough. This team just not good enough. Any way you want to slice it, not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. All right, so the A's are coming to town for a meaningless 3-game series to wrap up the year after a very emotional send-off to the Oakland Coliseum yesterday. We'll talk about that series and kind of what we're looking for here over the final 3 games in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch all the action between the Mariners and the A's tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. A's, again, coming off of a very emotional send-off to the Oakland Coliseum yesterday. I watched that game, or at least the final couple of innings of that game, and obviously everything that happened after the game. I assume you did as well, Colby. Do you have any thoughts on that? What were you feeling and thinking during that?
Screw John Fisher. It's really sad that this guy essentially single-handedly ripped a team away from a city that has supported it for 50 years, just due to greed and disingenuous efforts to keep the team and this whole like, oh, geez, we tried everything we could to stay here. It just didn't happen, blah, 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 blah. Essentially, in a way, blaming the victims of the crime he perpetrated. So, yeah, it's a bummer, man. Like, Oakland is a city that has really gone through it the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, they've lost the Warriors that they just moved across the bridge, but still. The Warriors playing San Francisco now, not Oakland. They lost the Raiders. Now they've lost the A's, and it just feels like they're being completely, taken advantage of as a fan, and they're having to bear the brunt of the hardest thing there is in sports. Having a team taken away from you, and they're having to bear that quite a bit over the last 5 years. And it's, as Seattle sports fans, I think we can all sympathize with Oakland A's fans and what they're going through right now. It's something that a lot of us have experience with. It's a very similar situation, to be frank. So,
same colors.
It's a bummer. It really is. The Oakland area deserves a Major League Baseball team. We know how supportive that fan base is when they have an owner who actually cares, when they have a good team, when they know that they're not being taken advantage of, they show up. That is a loud ballpark. It's an ugly ballpark, and they desperately need a new one, sure. But a lot of fun memories at that ballpark. A lot of really cool things happen there, and some great players have played there. It is a franchise that is steeped in history, and it's also been one that's moved around quite a bit, from Philadelphia to Kansas City to Oakland, but it stayed at Oakland for 50 years. And it's a bummer that it ended the way it did. And my hope is that Major League Baseball expands soon and Oakland gets a team, there were apparently plenty of investors who wanted to buy the A's from Fisher to keep them there, and he just refused to sell. So I guess you really didn't try everything, did you, John?
Well, there were efforts to build a new stadium.
Right, that he catapulted, and then his proposals were always just non-starters, like fully funded with public money, blah, 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 all that stuff. So, make no mistake, the Oakland A's have been stolen from the city of Oakland. It's not fair. I really hope that the expansion comes and Oakland is awarded a team, and I hope it doesn't take as long for Oakland to get their team back as it's taken Seattle to get their team back. And we still do not have the Sonics, and we still don't really have much of an idea of when that might happen, but hopefully soon for the Sonics, and hopefully Oakland gets a baseball team back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, watching that last night took me back to where I was about 16 and a half years ago, watching that Sonics Mavericks game, and also seeing, Clay Bennett's press conference, announcing the move and all that. Seeing the shots of fans crying, hearing Dallas Braden fight through tears and talking about his daughter on the broadcast. It was heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching stuff. And seeing, Mark Kotze, who, played there for, I believe, 4 years, is now the manager there. Seeing him have to, fight through tears, and seeing him embrace Mason Miller and some of his other players. It was all just really, really heartbreaking. And I feel for all of those fans, and frankly, yesterday, because I had already come to terms with the Mariners getting eliminated, so that wasn't really on my mind yesterday when they officially got eliminated. What was on my mind yesterday, baseball-wise, was just all those fans in Oakland that have had to watch their team just ripped away from them, because I know exactly how that feels, and it's terrible, and I still haven't gotten over it. And, I don't know, I can't speak for every single one of those fans. I'm sure there's some of those fans that are going to still support the A's when they're in Sacramento and when they move to Vegas eventually. But for me personally, when the Sonics left, that ruined my relationship with basketball and the NBA. Right? I still watch the NBA casually, but it took me years to even start doing that. And so I think for some of these fans, that might be the end of their relationship with baseball. And that's a shame. So, yeah. All right. Well, baseball still has to be played the next 3 days. You're going to be at the ballpark Saturday and Sunday. Are you watching for anything? Obviously, zero stakes here in this series, but any sort of like individual marks for players to get to, or just anyone you want to see? Anything?
Sure. I think, Cal Raleigh has a shot with a good series to not only set the record for most home runs in the first 4 years or whatever for a catcher to beat Mike Piazza. I think he needs 2 this weekend.
2 to tie, 3 to take the lead.
He also has a shot at 100 RBI mark, which is
he's at 96 right now.
Right, which is impressive for really anybody, but especially impressive for a catcher to manage that kind of offensive production. So I assume Cal will get 2 starts. He'll probably get that Sunday off, or maybe he'll DH that day. But again, he's caught a lot of innings this year. So maybe he gets a couple DH days. I don't know how much any of these guys are really going to play. 2 things to keep an eye on here on a personal level. This could be Justin Turner's last 3 games in what has been a very good major league career.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly for Mariner fans, almost certainly the final 3 games of Mitch Haniger's Mariners career.
Yeah.
And now Haniger hasn't played really at all this month. So he's very clearly, it seems obvious that the Mariners have made their decision on Haniger and all that. He will exercise his player option. The Mariners will just DFA him and pay him his money to go away. So I would hope that he's in the lineup all 3 games. I would hope that he gets, his final start in right field on Sunday, and you can take him off the field. And I hope people understand the magnitude of that, not just because I posted this on Twitter yesterday and people were like, he's back next year. He's got a player option. It's like, doesn't mean anything, guys. So I hope people aren't taking this for granted that Mitch Haniger is, oh, well, he'll be back next year. Like, I guess there's a small chance he is, but the overwhelming odds are is that Mitch Haniger is never going to wear a Mariners uniform again. And I hope that fans just, show their love to a player who's been through a lot. He was on the team that broke the drought. He was kind of the leader of that squad for a long time. And he was on the teams that, he lived through the rebuild and all that stuff. And so Haniger's pretty underrated character in the history of the Seattle Mariners. And I hope that people recognize that on Sunday and recognize what's happening when he comes off the field. And I guess more than that, I hope the Mariners also recognize what they need to do to send off Mitch Haniger. And maybe, just maybe we'll get one more magical Mitch moment and we'll get a walk-off hit or some kind of big hit because Mitch is really, really good at that. So maybe, just maybe we'll get one more Haniger moment and it'll be awesome.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, especially, Mitch, like if they allow Mitch to, if they go out and they get Mitch and he's able to walk off the field, and hopefully there's a really nice ovation for him and for everything that he's done for this organization and for the city. And then for Justin Turner, like if you love baseball, if you're just a baseball fan, I know Turner's only been here for a couple of months. He's obviously had some really nice contributions in his time in a Mariners uniform. But overall, if you love baseball, you respect baseball, you should give Justin Turner a nice ovation if this is it for him as well. And like you, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Cal. And in general, I'm just going to be looking out for like who plays, who doesn't, right? Is Victor Robles going to play these, final 3 games? Yeah. With how much he's been beaten up, how much is Cal going to play, right? Is Cal even going to get the opportunity to get to 100 RBI and, 92 homers?
I think he only needs one more steal also to beat Dan Wilson for the Mariners single season catcher stolen base.
Okay, well, he's got to let him do that, right?
I mean, if he doesn't, it just shows that Dan Wilson is kind of a coward.
Right, right.
Also, I think you're
let Cal pinch run.
Sure,
if he's not playing one of these games, let him pinch run, let him try and steal.
Let him pinch run for Victor Robles and steal second base. How about that? But yeah, also, like, are we going to see Luis Castillo? There's probably not much of a point anymore, but
right.
It does. If they want to, they could put him back out there. But again, doesn't seem like much of a point. Seems like they're just going to skip that spot and everybody will still be pitching on normal rest. It'll just be, they'll just skip the number 5 spot in the rotation and go with Woo and what would it be? It'd be Woo, Miller, Gilbert.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how it would go for the last 3. So we'll see if Castillo pitches, but just enjoy the last 3 games. Cause hey, you know what? This team, as annoying as they are and as hard as they are to root for, they're not playing baseball games for the next 5 months after Sunday.
Yeah.
Not meaningful ones anyways. So, if you're going to the ballpark, enjoy it. Don't feel like you're handing your money over to John Stanton and complying with his.
You're enabling him.
Yeah, you're not enabling John Stanton. You're going to a baseball game. The last opportunity you'll have to do so for 5-6 months now. So just go enjoy and cheer on the boys and pay attention as much as you want, walk the ballpark, whatever, do whatever. Right.
Yeah.
It's your money. It's your time.
And the Mariners are bigger than John Stanton.
Right. And so, if you don't feel like going, then don't. That's totally fine too. But don't feel like you are committing some kind of sin against the fandom.
It's not your fault. Okay. Let's make something very, very clear here. Mm-hmm. You, the fan, us, Colby and I, none of us are at fault for this, right? For still supporting the team, for still believing in the team, right?
Don't deprive yourself of something that brings you joy just because some other people want to try and feel like they're bigger than you because they won't support this fan or this team when they don't blah, 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 when we raise our kids to be Mariners fans, which is a subplot that's a different problem that you're raising kids specifically to be Mariner fans. But whatever, like
sure.
In general, don't feel like, you're enabling John Stan because you're going to these games. Go have fun, enjoy the ballpark, and enjoy again. It's a long winter, man. It's a really long winter. And so this is your last shot to go to the ballpark, do it. Mm-hmm. I know I am. So it's don't feel like you're enabling. Don't feel like you're a bad fan if you go to these games. You're not. This isn't your fault. This isn't your problem. And depriving yourself of something that makes you happy just to make other miserable people feel better. Stupid. Stupid.
100% agree. All right. So we're going to wrap things up here by because I was wondering if we should do this next week or today, because I don't know when they're going to have their end of season press conference. I don't even know if they are going to have an end of season press conference after the disaster last year, but they better. So we're going to get into some do's and don'ts for whoever holds that press conference. I'm going to assume that it's just going to be Jerry Dipoto again, but if Justin Hollander is there, maybe even John Stanton, most likely not. We'll go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Booking.com and PrizePicks. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Even an Orioles fan or a Guardians fan can have a good time in New York no matter what happens on the diamond this October. You can drown your playoff woes with a New York slice or celebrate advancing to the next round with a delicious chopped cheese, all while taking in the autumn vibes in Manhattan and capping it all off with a great stay in the city. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you, and the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Think Tyreek Hill will get more than 90.5 yards in week 1, or that Caleb Williams will throw for fewer than 236.5 yards in his debut? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch all the action between the Mariners and the A's tonight and over the course of the weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So, not sure if the Mariners are going to hold an end of season press conference or not. They should. I assume they will, even despite how much of a disaster last year's end of season press conference was. I'm going to assume that Jerry Dipoto's time to just freely talk, though, is going to be a lot more brief than it was last year.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Put a microphone in front of Jerry.
Yeah.
Brevity's not really his strong suit, so we'll see.
We can relate to that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a professional.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in and out in 30 minutes. Boom.
Yeah. As it's 30 minutes here on this recording, we're definitely going to have to edit down. Yeah. If you see some cuts in this episode, you know why, folks. All right. So let's go over some do's and don'ts for this end of season presser. I think it would be a good exercise for us to do here, and maybe, you know, some people that work for the Mariners organization might be listening to this. So, you know what? Take out the notepad and take some notes here, folks, because you guys haven't done a great job of speaking to your fan base over the last year or so.
If you want some expert opinions about how your fan base is going to react to certain sound bites.
Yeah.
That's us. So.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I think this one we should just get out of the way. This is the most obvious one. Don't spin this year as anything positive. Right? Talked about this earlier on in the show. This is not a step forward. There's nothing positive about this. No matter how many good things you did do this year, no matter how good the rotation was, no matter how you did hold a 10-game lead at one point, all that stuff, no matter how much better the offense got in the last, month and a half of the season, nothing is positive about going at best 85-77 and missing the playoffs.
I'll say that you can acknowledge like individual
acknowledge
like, hey, like, look, our offense was pretty good in the second half. We feel like when Dan took over, we feel like we figured something out there. The rotation was really good all year, but ultimately we won 85 games and missed the playoffs. So we're not satisfied. We don't view this as a step forward. This is definitely a kind of a wasted year in terms of what we want to accomplish. So you can acknowledge some of the things that went well, but I really hope, like, if you utter the phrase, at one point we had a 10-game lead, you are asking.
That's exactly the problem.
Right.
That's exactly the problem.
That is not a positive, right?
Yeah.
That is a negative. So do not mention that unless it's in the vein of, like, we had a 10-game lead and we missed the playoffs. Obviously, this was not a good year. This was a disaster, whatever, right? Like, but you can't spin like we had a 10-game lead at one point, so that's good.
No one wants to hear about the good things of this year. I'm just going to tell you that right now, straight up. Right.
Again,
what people want to hear is you taking responsibility, accountability, and how are you going to fix this?
The big one is acknowledge that this year was a disaster. And I mean, the verbiage doesn't really matter. You don't have to call it a disaster or whatever. I mean, you probably score some points if you did say that, but, like, look, this year was a disappointment. Mm-hmm. There is no question about it. And everybody in this organization at every level failed to some degree. I failed this offseason. The players didn't perform the way that they usually do. The field staff had some issues. And we'll see if Jerry wants to throw ownership under the bus. He probably doesn't. He probably won't. But, like, I think you can make, like, from the top down, we as an organization failed this year. It was a failure. There is no question about that. Did we have some things go right that we're excited about in the future? Sure, absolutely. Does that matter today? No, it does not. We're here to talk about our failures. We're here to talk about where we can get better. And we're here to talk about the future of this team. You have to acknowledge that, above all else, this year is a failure. That is the number one goal. You should repeat that over and over again, just to hammer home the point, even to the point where people are like, okay, we get it. Just hammer that home. All right. This year was a bust. This year was a step back. Just use that phrase. It's a step back from where we want to go and where we think we can get. All right. Obviously, the entire press conference isn't going to be doom and gloom, right? They're not going to sit up there and just, light themselves up for 20 minutes. It's not going to happen. Okay.
But you also shouldn't spin this.
No,
in a
the overall tone still has to be like, wow, this is a wake-up call. This is what, right? It still has to be an overall. Yeah. It has to be very clear from the moment you sit down on that stage to the moment you leave. This is not an acceptable outcome for anybody involved. Yeah. And if you try to spin this as any kind of positive, like, step forward, you completely undercut the entire message, which is, this is not acceptable. We're going to fix it.
Yeah. Also, if you get asked about specific positions, or you just find yourself talking about that and which positions you might need to address this offseason, don't say that you had the 5th highest F4 from your third base position this year. Because a lot of that
I shocked Ty with yesterday.
A lot of that comes from defense, and we all watched the third base situation this year. Josh Rojas got off to a really nice start. Want to give credit where credit is due on that front.
And he was one of the worst hitters in baseball for about 4 months.
Exactly. Mariners third baseman, despite posting a 4.5 F4 this year and finishing 5th in all of baseball at that position.
It's unbelievable, guys, but it's true.
Yeah. /212, 311, 358. That is unacceptable from your third base position, especially that slugging percentage.
Make that work from second base.
Yeah. So do not at all. And I'm telling this specifically to the man who said, well, when you combine Josh Rojas's best season and Luis Urias's best season, you got a 5-win third baseman. No.
Urias didn't really contribute for 5 months. So,
right, exactly. That's the other thing. Is
mostly like Dylan Moore and Josh Rojas. Like,
your initial idea at third base was a disaster. Right? You gave up on it a month and a half into the season.
Right. So Yes. Yeah. Don't pat yourself on the back, essentially. Like, we thought we were going to get about 5 wins from our third base position, and we did. We actually did. We were 5th, and nobody cares. Nobody cares, Jerry. Nobody cares, Justin, whoever else is up there. They don't care, because nobody is going to look this fan base in the face and with a straight face, look at them and say, third base was great this year. Like, we feel really good about what happened at third base. You're lying. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're insulting the fan base by suggesting that. So, do not pat yourself on the back for that. Don't pat yourself on the back for finding Luke Raley. No patting yourself on the back.
No.
If anybody wants to like present you like, well, like if somebody wants to ask you like, well, what about Luke Raley? You found him, you found Victor Robles, then you talk about those guys. But what you don't do, you don't sit there and go like, yeah, we had some misses this offseason, but when you look at what we got from Raley, when you look at what we got from
Robles, if someone asks you about
no.
like why did Jorge Polanco or Mitch Garver or whoever, why did those guys fail and why does this continue to happen? They'll be like, well, we also got Randy Arozarena and Victor Robles. No.
Answer the question. Don't spin.
Yes.
Stop spinning. Just answer the question.
Well, and also, if you have changed something in your approach to acquiring offensive players, and that's what's led to the success of like Justin Turner and Randy Arozarena, talk about that. Talk about how you've changed things since the offseason.
Right. You don't have to go into detail, right? I mean, it'd be cool if you did, but but you just have to be like, look, we think we've identified something that will help us in the future at identifying major league talent who can come in and produce in Seattle. We saw this early, and we applied it to Justin Turner and Randy Arozarena and Victor Robles. They all came in and they hit. So we're really excited about that. But obviously, it's something that we did not do a good enough job of this winter, right? Something like that, because not enough of the guys we brought in hit anywhere near where we expected.
Right.
So. Yeah.
Finally, don't get into any weird baseball theory, 54% type of stuff. No, none of that.
Nope. You're not going to educate the masses at this press conference. That's not what this is about. Okay. No. Don't rely on the media to spin it for you either.
No.
Because newsflash, they're not.
I'm not going to get on here and try to translate for Jerry Dipoto.
No. So don't tell the fan base how lucky they are. Don't tell the fan base, how patient they need to be. Like, no. This is a very simple, straightforward press conference.
Yeah,
it really is. Take accountability from yourself, and talk about where you fell short across the board. Don't make any sweeping promises about payroll. Just don't. Because here's the deal. I want to believe Jerry Dipoto. And when Jerry Dipoto says, like, we're going to have more resources this year than we ever have, fine. You said that for the last 3 winters, and every single time you've gotten burned. So, Jerry, instead of setting yourself up to be the fall guy for John Stanton when he pulls the rug out from under you, just say, we're not going to get into that at this time. So, very, very simply put, right? This is a very easy press conference to nail. No positive spin unless directly asked about something positive that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge the mistakes that you made, vow to fix them, even if you don't know how. At least say it. We're going to fix it. We're going to change it. Right. We've already started to make that change. And don't pat yourself on the back for anything that went well this year. Everything that happened this year was a disappointment for the fans, right? Like, individually, you could be geeked out of your mind that Brian Wu looked as good as he did.
But individually, none of it matters because you didn't make the playoffs and you didn't pay it off. Right. Like I said at the start of the show, this was a wasteful season, right?
Again,
you failed to meet your ultimate goal, and you wasted all of
acknowledge some of the good that happened this season, as long as it is in the realm of, and we wasted it, and we couldn't take advantage of it, and that is the problem. This isn't the day to trumpet brighter days are ahead. This isn't the day to, talk about like, oh, well, we think we're so well set up for 26 and 20. This isn't the day to trumpet your farm system. Like, this is the day to talk about the failures of this entire franchise, top to bottom, They failed yet again to deliver playoff baseball to the city of Seattle. And that is what the whole press conference has to be about. That's what the whole tone should be about.
Yeah.
Is that failure. It's really not that difficult.
Yeah.
Right?
And as someone that has believed in your process a lot more than many others in this fan base and has appreciated what you've done within the organization through, drafting and trades and all that, I don't care anymore about what you have coming down the pipeline. I don't care that the Arkansas Travelers and the Modesto Nuts won their respective league championships. I don't care about any of that. I want the Seattle Mariners to be good. I want the Seattle Mariners to win divisions. I want the Seattle Mariners competing for championships. Tell me how that's going to happen. So that's all I want from this press conference. I don't want to hear about all the good things you've done. I don't want to hear you patting yourself on the back. I want to hear about how you're going to fix this and you're going to get this thing back on track.
Yeah. I really doubt we're going to get any like actual news out of this presser. Nothing that like we would say is like, that's
no, the only thing that is going to make headlines is if they say something stupid like last year. So just don't say anything stupid.
Yeah. So,
I know that's very hard for this organization to accomplish, particularly over the last calendar year, but you can do it. I believe in you. Right.
So now we don't know when this end of season presser is going to happen, but it has to. You cannot duck the media after what you just did. So as much as people are out there like, I don't even want Jerry, like it would be a disaster if he did. I don't want him to. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. So they have to have it. Or they should have it, certainly, and they almost certainly will. We don't know when it's going to be, right? It probably not Monday would be my guess would be Tuesday or Wednesday. And when they have it, we'll talk about it.
Also, actually stream it this time where people can access it and not, mysteriously not stream it all of a sudden because of the playoffs are on. No, stream it.
Put it on your YouTube channel, put it on your website at the very least. You should be carrying it on Root Sports Live, but whatever, right? At least put it out there so people can see. Otherwise, it feels like you're trying to hide something. So, and also it has the added bonus of you being able, like if you say something, like we can see the context surrounding it, right? It's also to protect yourself a little bit. Unless you're so afraid you're going to screw that up even, that you don't want the context out there. But anyways, we don't know when this is going to take place. It usually happens a couple days after the regular season ends. Probably not Monday. That's typically when guys clear out the locker room and the clubhouse and all that stuff. They have their exit interviews. So it'll probably be Tuesday or Wednesday. And regardless of what's said, we'll talk about it on the next day's CTZ or Locked On. Probably both, honestly.
Oh, definitely both.
Yeah. Hopefully there's nothing too newsworthy.
Subscribe to the Patreon. If they do say something stupid, we'll let it rip on there.
Yes. We, that is the unfiltered, the unfiltered look at how we view the Mariners. Unfiltered meaning not that we change like our opinion, it's just our delivery.
We can just say words that we can't say on this show. That's
right. And we have like no time limit in which to explain our discuss.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't have to cut anything out.
Which is kind of how we're treating this show right now. But
nevertheless, good luck. But anyways, we will talk about whatever is said at the presser after they actually have it. So that'll probably be next week sometime. Mailbag Monday, we'll be back on Monday. And then on probably, Monday or Tuesday next week, we'll kind of share with you guys how we're attacking the off-season shows and all that stuff. So stay tuned for all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a really, really fun plan for the off season. Colby and I started hammering that out a few days ago. We have some new ideas, especially one for a new like theme show that's going to happen almost every week, if not every single week. Like how we have, Mailbag Monday and Fan Fiction Friday. We're going to have a new one of those. So really excited about that.
Fan Fiction Friday coming back next week. Ty is so excited for it.
So stoked.
Look at him trying to hide his excitement.
Right, exactly.
He loves this segment.
But yeah, lastly, before we get out of here, I just want to say thank you to everyone that has been with us for years, that joined us for the first time this season, for sticking with us this season. Obviously, it was very disappointing. There were a lot of highs, a lot of lows. So if you stuck with us during the lows, really appreciate it. the way that Colby and I get paid, this is our full-time jobs for those of you that don't know, but the way that Colby and I get paid is based on how much you watch and listen to the show. So for those of you that still supported the show, even when the team was incredibly annoying to watch, I really appreciate you because for how rough it was recording during those times. I can only imagine how little you probably wanted to consume Mariners content during that time. So yeah, if you still supported the show during that, especially, we are very, very, very grateful for that. So thank you.
Yes. Also, some giveaways probably going to happen over the next few weeks, just to thank you guys for sticking around. This is our third full season doing this, actually, believe it or not. Every day for 6 months. Watching
every single day.
Team.
Yeah.
Every single damn day. Anyways.
There's
some giveaways, stuff like that. We are looking into more charitable stuff like we did last year, which, we'll probably talk about when we actually announce the thing more, but there's been some really cool things that have happened over the last 3 years. We want to give back a little bit as we try to do. It's been a while since we've done giveaways and stuff like that. So it's time to start doing those again. And so just stay tuned, guys. I think next week there'll be quite a few announcements taking place. So stay tuned for all that and hopefully some good off-season coverage. And, will we talk about Juan Soto once a week? Maybe.
Soto Mojo.
Soto Mojo, hashtag. Leave it in the comments, guys. Hashtag Soto Mojo.
Also want to thank our guests that we had over the course of the season. The Marine Layer guys, Jay's Trident Podcast, Ben Ranieri, Gary Hill Jr., Aaron Goldsmith, Ryan Divish, all of you. Thank you guys for helping us make this show even that much better. And obviously, again, thank you everyone that listened. If you listened to one episode this year, if you listened to all of them, we really, really appreciate your support. So that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Colby. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty and Colby and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace. Go Imps.